ready to get going now. Please make sure you write in the comments if we do have any technical issues along the way. Make sure you let us know if you can hear us and if we're all still moving about and not frozen. I want to welcome you all to the fall of 2020. It was a really fun summer season, and I could not be more excited to share with you some of the highlights that came up. Oh, I just lost one of my guests. Hopefully she comes back in my stream. So 2020 was filled with clinics, river trips, and definitely a big end to the season, which you'll hear about soon. I wanted to commemorate the season by checking in with some of my students, some of my paddling posse, and see what their highlights were. I want to see what they got up to and how we can keep it going. So without further ado, I am going to introduce my friend Jackie. I met her this season over Instagram, and our friendship and paddling connection has just grown. So I'm going to bring her on the screen and we'll start our live show. Hey, Jackie.
Hey, Rita. Good to see you, buddy.
It's good to see you too. So, Jackie, I am super excited to have you here on the show for episode 1. We're all about community and connection in November, and I could not be excited to have made the connection with you this season. So why don't we start off tonight's episode, Jackie, by you telling us who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm proudly wearing my Sup YXE t-shirt tonight because I'm from Saskatoon. I'm a supper from Saskatoon. I've been paddling for about 5 years here in Saskatoon. We have, well, it's kind of a lazy river. It's a big South Saskatchewan. It's a big river, but it's not, there's not rapids or anything like that on it. And it's pretty mellow. And so I've been paddling flat water, and whenever I travel, I take a little inflatable with me and I try to get out on the water. And I just like everything about SUP, all the different modalities, the racing, the touring, the surfing, and now I've discovered river paddling.
And how did you discover river paddling, Jackie? What first brought you to it?
Well, you know what? My journey, I guess where it started was with a group called KCPO, which was Keep Calm Paddle On, which was a fundraising and awareness for mental health. And I did 2 trips down the South Saskatchewan with that group, and they were the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life because we had wind and it was super challenging. And it was a self-supported 3-day SUP trip, 150 kilometers down the South Saskatchewan River. So from there, I got hooked into the SUP community across Western Canada. And a year ago in June, I registered and went and participated in a SOAR camp, which was run out of Canmore and Kananaskis, and that was my introduction to river paddling. And so that kind of got my feet wet. And then earlier this year, probably about when we started getting locked down, my friend Trish is like, hey, Jackie, you should check out the Aquabatics site. There's some courses on there that I think look really good. And there's this Kootenay River trip. I think, I think I'm going to do it. We should, do it. So I went on the Aquabatics website, and there were all these courses and detailed course descriptions about, what we're going to learn and how we're going to do it and where we're going to be. And I went, oh, okay, how can I fit this in? Because Calgary is 6.5-hour drive from Saskatoon. And I signed up for a few of them right off the hop.
Yeah. Do you know how many clinics you took, Jackie? Because I saw quite a lot of Jackie this summer.
Yeah, I made a lot of trips to Calgary. I did 5 trips and 6 courses in the end when all was said and done.
Wow. And how far of a drive was it for every course? Just because people might not know the reference.
Yeah, so it was 7 to 8 hours, depending on whether I was going to Calgary, to Cochrane, or all the way to Kananaskis. So it was a bit of a hike.
Was it worth it?
Oh, every time. Absolutely.
So, Jackie, we wanted to talk about some of your season highlights. So, some of the things that really hit your ticket this summer, especially in regards to river stand-up paddleboarding, because I know that you did a ton of it, especially coming to see me for all 6 of those different clinics. So, what was the first highlight, Jackie, that you wanted to share with us tonight?
Well, I think I start with the end, and the end being the Kootenay River trip. And this was a 3-night, 4-day raft supported stand-up paddle adventure down the Kootenay River. And it was amazing. It was unlike anything I'd ever done before. And if I go to one of the standout moments on that trip, was this gnarly rapid that I don't think even had a name. And we were, I don't know how far back in the lineup. I was near the back. And Dixie said, Jackie, Rita wants us to spread out here. So just slow down and wait and spread out. So I did. And then I'm getting up there and I'm like, okay, what's my line? Where am I going to go here? Because I wasn't really paying attention to everybody else because I spread them out. I never saw where Rita went. And I'm like paddling and I'm like, whoa, there's some nasty stuff. Oh, I don't want to go over there. I don't want to go over there. Okay, I'm going to go this way. And as I'm riding through it, I'm like, whoa, oh, avoid that, avoid that. Okay, keep going this way. And it was like, whew. And I got through it. I'm like, wow, I stayed on my feet. I nailed that.
Yeah.
It was pretty exhilarating.
I remember turning around and looking over my shoulder and like you definitely took the bigger of the 2 safe lines, but you crushed it. You dialed it. You were right. There was big stuff on either side of you. You navigated through some holes, and I think that you definitely followed the V's.
I did.
And even though you went on the outside, like it was really proud moment to see you navigate through that, and you led the way for the rest of the girls in the group. And I think that was awesome. It was great to see all your skills to come get together and like be applied on the river. And I think that trip from an instructor's perspective, getting to guide you down there, right? You were crushing it and really showing that you worked hard to be there that season, and you were reading the water for yourself, making your own decisions, and we were there to support you just having fun and staying safe. So it was really cool to watch you grow and excel and also be a little bit silly and wild on the trip. Can you tell us one of your more funny highlights from the Kootenay River trip? Maybe something, one of the wilder things us girls and token guy Jared got up to?
Oh, it's funny when you say that because I'm like, I've got these like little photo flashbacks, us doing the Burt Reynolds pose on the waterfall, the warm up dance in the morning where we're all doing our little flossing and handstands and dancing to the music. Yeah, there were a lot of good moments on that trip, and it was what was neat was, well, one, we had amazing weather. It was like 30 degrees the first 3 days. But unlike being on a self-supported trip, all the gear was in the raft and the food was made for us. And I'm like roughing it, but I felt totally pampered. So those are just some of the things that when I think about the highlights, and then just the people, like the people are just so awesome in the SUP community, and that's super important.
Yeah, I think that we had a really solid group, and I really am excited to see who gets added to that trip and how those groups keep growing and evolving, because I think the group definitely is a big part of that trip. And speaking of groups, I will be hopefully chatting with some of our friends in the upcoming live chat episodes that were also on that Kootenay trip. So we'll
Awesome.
have to have to find out that. And so, Jackie, getting ready for the Kootenay River trip, because we said that was the end of the season. That was the highlight moment. That was what, Trisha got you fired up in the winter to get excited and work towards this trip. But there was all those clinics in anticipation for the Kootenay River trip. And along some of those different clinics, I think there might have been a highlight or two that really stood out when you had come down. And I think one of them might have been on the Kananaskis.
It might have been, yeah. There were a few out there on the Kananaskis, and one that comes to mind is there's a rapid on the can called Thunder Bunny, and it's just a nice wave train. It just kind of, I don't know how many waves are in the train, but when you're on and you're feeling it, you just ride it, and you just like, you be the wave, right? Like the wave is built for the badfish board, and you just be the wave, and you just like, oh, I nailed that. And it just, when you get it, and you're not fighting it, and it's so elegant. It's such a dance. That's, when I watch my fellow paddlers out there, there's just something, elegance is the word. It's a dance when you're on that board and you're dialing it in over these waves.
Well, and surfing them.
And then turning around and going upstream and surfing them, catching that. That's yet a completely different feeling, right? And a completely different challenge. And that's what I love about the river, is there's so many challenges, and it's the culmination of, strength and balance and agility and but knowledge. And what I've very quickly figured out is that life's too short, or I'm too old to figure this out on my own. I don't need to go and throw myself in over and over and over again and try to figure out what I'm doing wrong. What I really appreciate about your teaching and your clinics is that you've got a very dialed in plan, and you take us sequentially through, what we need to learn so that we've got the skills so that we can execute on the river. And what I think is one of your strengths in those classes is you can have a really broad range of either of skill level, or just people, somebody's having an on night and somebody's having an off night, and yet you can dial it in and you can challenge the one that's, at the top and getting bored. You recognize that before she or he gets bored, and you give them an added task to work on. And for the person that's struggling and is just fighting it, you're able to dial that in and figure out what's going on, and coach effectively to get them through those moments. So that's why I keep coming back.
Thanks, Jackie. I love that feedback. I feel like I know a specific moment personally when you were one of those students getting to the top of the group, and I think we were out at 40 Boat Eddy, and we'd been kept leaving the eddy a little bit below the surf wave, and we were pushing you higher and higher and higher, and you were dialing it and dancing and ferrying right back up on that right at the top weddy, super high. Yeah, and you felt the push and you excelled with the push. So no, I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you as a student, because you always keep me on my toes and ask the best questions, because I think that it helps everybody else understand, because they might have been thinking the same thing and just not ready to say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And well, I know that you have one more highlight, and we're definitely gonna have to share a video at the end of this story, and we're gonna have to segue shortly here to our next guest, Rebecca. But in addition to coming down and paddling as a student this summer and participating in my clinics and coming along the guided Kootenay River trip, we also became friends, and we did go on some paddling adventures together and get a little silly on the can. And I got a little 10'5" raft, and my oar frame had finally arrived. And so it was about a week or so before the Tiziko trip when Jackie just happened to be in town, and a bunch of girls were going to go test out the raft. And so, Jackie, why don't you tell us what it's like to get invited to go rafting with Rita, her first time behind her oars on a new boat?
Well, first of all, that was, rafting with Rita, and I brought my board, and I was, not planning to paddle a whole lot because this was the beginning of the season and I was not very good. And then I'm like, oh, we're right below Widowmaker. Well, you might as well paddle this section. Let's just, you can do, like you're fine. And so I paddled a lot more than I was anticipating, but then we got to, what was the what's the name of that hole?
Point Break? Point Break, yep.
So we're getting into, I'm now in the raft, and I've never actually whitewater rafted. How I don't know how that's possible, but never done that. I can imagine what it feels like. And I'm in the front and I'm paddling and helping out where I can. And then we get lined up to go, well, I guess to go into this hole. And so we go, there's this big hole in Point Break, and we go into it, and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm expecting. I'm going to get wet. It's sploosh, like, being on a ride at the fair. And then we get kicked back like this, and then we get kicked up like this, and then we get kicked up like this, and then spun around backwards. And then I'm like, holy smokes, that's whitewater rafting. Woo. It was quite the ride.
Yeah. And I definitely told her immediately in that moment that I meant to do all of those things. And I'm going to stick true to that. And I do, before we talk about Jackie's sup portion of the day with our friend Bex, I think we all need to take a quick moment to watch this video. So here we go, guys. I'm going to hide Jackie and I. Actually, I'm going to see if I can keep Jackie in the bottom corner while she watches this video. On the river.
I could just reenact.
All right, this will be good warm up for you for the race course later. Don't worry, I've done this before.
I can't see it though, Rita.
I used to be a raft guide.
You used to see a lot of things, eh? Yeah. Not sure what's happening. Hold my breath.
Hold your breath.
I think we glitched out there for a second, but we're back.
I didn't see it.
No, Jackie, it was playing the video, and because you're on your phone tonight, we weren't able to see you. So without further ado, someone that joined us on Jackie's rowdy adventure there was our friend Rebecca. And here she is. Hey, Rebecca, how's it going?
Great. How are you?
Pretty good. So, Rebecca, you actually joined Jackie and myself on that rafting adventure that day. And we'll hear about your story, but we got to paddle with Jackie, and that was her first time paddling a big section of the can. And it was your first time doing something else that day. What did you do?
Yeah, I went right from Widowmaker to the end of the race course. So that was my first time going through the race course and like probably a few other sections of the can while I was at it, but like the race course stands out.
Oh yeah, nice. So we had Jackie, her first time doing most of the can on a stand-up paddleboard, first time in a raft through all of the big stuff, and we had Rebecca coming down to do the full send on her sup. So as we transition to hear what Rebecca's highlights were for this season, I want to make sure that we say thank you so much, Jackie, for coming and tuning in. And it was a little crazy. The first episode, they're always a little crazy, but thank you for sharing your highlights, sharing your feedback, and sharing some of the fun stories that you had over the 2020 summer. I can't wait to paddle with you again soon. I don't put my paddling gear away, so I hope to see you this winter. It's never too cold. The can's on this weekend. Just saying.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll be paddling this weekend.
Christmas.
Hopefully we'll see you soon, Jackie. Have a good one.
Okay, thanks.
I have to remember that I'm in charge of hiding her. Nice. Well, Rebecca, so before we hear about your story and the first time going down the race course, why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are and a little bit about your paddling?
Yeah, so I'm Rebecca, and I started paddling, I think it's got to be maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, mainly flat water until I went to CanFest last year and realized like what you could really do on a paddleboard on moving water. And it was, yeah, a bit of a gong show, but I also had a blast and just got hooked and, kind of dialed into the river community. And like the people were all wonderful. And like that just got me ready, got me budgeting for the next season to get myself a dry suit and the proper board and the proper paddle and everything that I needed to really just like hit a river safely and like have a ton of fun while doing it. Um, yeah, so I started paddling back in March on the river, like seriously, because with COVID and everything, all the shutdowns, I figured rivers are still open. I can still do that. So I committed myself to getting the gear and getting moving on that. And fortunately, Rita moved into my neck of the woods. So I was able to reach out to her and say, like, hey, I'm a little new to this. Need some help figuring out self-rescues and things. Would you mind taking me out on the river to get me up to speed so I'm not a danger to anyone? And from that point on, kind of early May, it turned into a summer of clinics and building skills and dialing in and like just getting good on moving water.
So getting good on moving water, that was, I think that raft run, race course run down the can with Jackie there in the raft, that would have been mid to late July, I think.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Right? And so at that time, where were you? What did you done had to work on your skills up to that point?
Yeah, so like building off of some lessons with you, Rita, then it was getting my advanced flat water certification with Paddle Canada because I had already had a bit of a background teaching some flat water stuff, but wasn't in the Paddle Canada kind of stream to say. And it's such a bad pun. But I got going with that and got myself certified and met some really awesome people. From there, I got a call from Rita shortly after saying, hey, we're doing a River One course and we need some students to help, to give the instructor candidates someone to teach. Are you free? I said, yep, not going to pass up a chance to paddle and to learn stuff on rivers. So I went and did that. And same story, met some great people, learned some great skills. Week after that, I did a 4-day trip on the Red Deer River with some family. And had a great time on completely the wrong board, but we can have a discussion about that in a later chat. And then, sure enough, I get a call from Rita later that week. Hey, we're doing a River 2 instructors course and we need some students. Or no, it wasn't the instructors course. I think it was just a River 2 class.
Yeah, it was just a class. It was just a regular student class that time.
Yeah, and you were like, I think you're ready for this. I was like, well, if Rita thinks I'm ready, I'm probably ready. So signed up for that. And like, I'll make a note. I was familiar then with like the course or like the structure of courses through Paddle Canada, the skills that I needed to pick up. And I didn't see myself doing a River 2 class until like next summer, probably, because I wanted to, like dial in some stuff. But I think Rita was right. I was ready for it and, ready to take on that challenge and start to build those skills and at least like get exposed to, more of what like advanced whitewater paddling could be. So I gone through all of that. I think that's like 5 or 6 clinics or lessons or some combination of the two. And then I get a call from Rita saying, hey, we're going paddling next weekend. I got a raft I want to take out. There's a group of us. Do you want to join? And sure enough, I said, yep. Not going to turn down a chance to paddle. And off we went. Yep, down the can from Widowmaker to the end of the race course.
And how was that the first time?
It was awesome. Like I look back on it and I recognize like a bunch of the different sections that, I either just did some swimming afterwards, which was fine. There's always something to learn with a swim. Or, the sections that I think I was able to capably handle that I would not have been able to do at the beginning of the season. Like early on in the season, I couldn't get out of an eddy to save my life. And the fact that I was then doing longer stretches of the river, and recognizing kind of where my own skills fit, was like really a highlight. It was an opportunity to see, like, here are all these courses, here's everything that I've started to build up, let's put it into practice in, like, not a course setting, just like out paddling with some really rad people and like having fun on a Saturday. So that was just super cool.
What did you think about some of the bigger rapids? Like, what would you say your most intimidating feature on the can was that first time down?
I think just the entire race course itself. There were some other pieces like Point Break, but I had already done that in one of the courses. I had gone for my knees, and then I had managed to do it standing. So that wasn't quite as big standout for me. I think in the next section that I really just need to get dialed in is that entire race course section. So I didn't do that standing the first time. I think that'd be super impressive, and I'm not that at this point in my paddling career. But I did take it from my knees, and it was just a great experience to recognize still the control and the fun that I could have, being on my knees, but then also starting to recognize, what were some of the features as part of the race course, start to notice where are my lines, where should I paddle, what are some of the easier, harder routes to take, just starting to make those connections and set up pathways for myself in that section of the river. And it still looks challenging. I'm excited to try to tackle it again and maybe do it standing the whole way. But yeah, I think that was just a really cool opportunity kind of midway through the season after I had some skills and knowledge to start to put those pieces together and own it for myself.
We went down it another time with Jay later in the season, did we not?
We did.
Yeah, and I feel like you stood up.
I don't think I did. No, I was having a rough night. There were some features that I was just not making earlier on in on the river. I was like, you know what, this is not my night to stand the race course. So, big pat on my own back for recognizing that.
I think that's something that's super awesome to recognize, right? And I think that making the choice that first time down and the second time down, right, to take a couple chances and opportunities to slow things down, make yourself more stable in that bigger water environment. I like to call it the on-water scout, right? We saw Jackie get in the raft for her first time down, and she got the opportunity to scout a lot of the river that she had never experienced before, right? And I bet next year she's going to be coming along with us, and she's probably going to take the race course on her knees for the first time, and then she's going to hop in and stand up, and she's going to be charging just like the rest of us. Heck, I bet next year you guys are all going to be racing me down the race course. She's still here. I'm going to unmute her and see if she agrees.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, you're racing us down the race course.
Bring it on.
Yeah. So if
It's at the
we
weekend.
host if we're able to host some stand-up paddleboard race and challenges, ladies, can I officially take that as a challenge from the both of you?
Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah.
All right. So Jackie, do you agree? Are you going to be ready for next season? You're going to come scout the race course on your board and then get ready to stand up, send it with us?
Absolutely.
Nice.
It's nice. It's nice to have those aspirational goals to know that there are some pretty straightforward, challenging steps that you take to get there, right? And I know that with the progression that I had this year, that I'll be there. You just wait, honey. I'm gonna be on your tail, and you're gonna be and then you're gonna be like, damn, how'd she pass me?
Yeah, right.
I gotta chase her.
Well, I'm going to start running up and down those stairs tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I gotta start training. And Jackie's in it. Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
yeah, right. Yeah, Rebecca, you better start training. Like I'll see you on the weekend on the can. All right, Jackie, we're gonna say goodbye to you once again. Thanks for jumping back in to put on the challenge.
Goblin's been thrown. Okay.
Yeah, the gauntlet has been thrown, and I would take Jackie seriously. She's pretty determined. She started off this winter. I think she had a broken leg, and she's come back to sending it. And she was surfing into Tofino, and so yeah, if she says that the challenge is on and we better look out, then yeah, workout training starts tomorrow. We'll see you this weekend, Rebecca. But so in addition to training to paddle your home rivers, what other things did you get up to this season, and what were some of your other paddling highlights?
Ooh, I'm gonna throw in like a mini highlight. Just another like clinic and lesson that will lead to other stories is just like a surfing lesson and like getting used to like sup surfing, because I kind of like dabbled a little bit as like part of some clinics, but like to have an evening with some other folks and try out a few different boards and just get a sense of like surfing a standing wave, like that was a pretty big highlight. So like big thanks to Aquabatics for even having courses over this summer, because it was a bit of a wild summer for everyone across the world. So yeah, I'm just like super grateful that I even had access to some of those learning opportunities and could make the summer what it was. Yeah, so some like stat highlights for me, because I am that type of person. I think I figure I had about like 28 paddling days this year, which like far eclipses anything that I had previously done. So that was really exciting.
Well, and you work a full-time 9-to-5 job, right?
Yeah, I'm not one of those like paddle all my life kind of people, like someone next to me right now virtually. That sounds fun though, so not throwing you under that bus. Yeah, so a lot of paddling days, a lot of weekends spent out in Kananaskis. And then I was on 4 different rivers. So the Bow is my home river. So done a few stretches of that in and around the Calgary area. I was on the Red Deer River for a 4-day trip through rural Alberta. That was pretty neat, pretty chill. And then also leading into my final highlight was going to Unlikely Paddle Fest in middle of nowhere, British Columbia. So it's about an 11-hour drive from Calgary to Likely, BC. And again, that's my friend Rita calling me up saying, hey, there's this great paddle fest that you probably don't want to miss. Sure enough, I didn't. So that's the 4th river that I like took my sup on, was the Lower Caribou. And it was mid-September, so beautiful time of the year. Just spectacular scenery on the drive, on the paddle. And it was like it was such a cool river to be on. It was like kind of everything that I had done on the Kananaskis, but like kind of next level. Like they were just like it was just like features like times 2.
Well, before we even I want to hear more about the Lower Caribou, but before we get too far ahead, we had a bit of an adventure getting to Unlikely. Did we not have? It's a little bit of one in the dark. Where we were waiting for a friend and we were lost on the side of the road, and then eventually we all got there and we're setting up our tent in the middle of the night. But I think that there was definitely some ghosts on our way into the ghost town that were messing with our group there.
I think there were, and like messing with some group members' vehicles. So there were a few of us that met up in 100 Mile House. So hour and a half, 2 hours outside of Likely, or outside of like the campsite. And our poor buddy Jay, I think he had some like car troubles on the way up to 100 Mile House, and then we all caravanned through to the campsite. And as we're driving along on the dirt road, Jay was bringing up the rear, and his lights were like no longer on behind me. And so I just continued to drive a little bit further, thinking like, oh, I'll catch up. We're just on some hills. I just can't see him right now. And then we started to get closer to the campsite, and then the road branched off. And I was like, I feel like he's not going to be okay. So I'm just going to sit and wait here until I see his car show up, which is arguably not the best strategy, but also like not the worst. So I'm going to go with that. And yeah, sure enough, I think it was like 20 minutes later, he ended up rolling through and had to do some like last minute patchwork on his car because something blew. And it's like 11 o'clock as we're rolling in. And yeah, I was just.
So the
next
night
level.
before paddling, so you show up to a place where you've never heard of before. You only know what, maybe 2 people.
Yep.
In the middle of the night. And we are briefly going to talk a little bit about the dynamic of Unlikely and how it was addressed this year when we bring in Claudette. But so it's the middle of the night. We've been driving through this forest road, super narrow, and your friend's missing. Everything ends up being okay, but it's what, like 9:30, 11, like it was 10 o'clock at night, and you're setting up your tent, and all you can hear is these raging rivers around you. What were you feeling in that first moments of being in the middle of nowhere at a paddle festival?
I think honestly, just like excitement for like what was gonna come. It's like, because all you just hear is these like raging rivers. You've already like had a bit of an adventure coming in, and like this is my first time showing up, so I didn't really know what to expect either. And like, so I think it was just like, heart pumping, like getting ready for like what the rest of the weekend's gonna bring, because it was 3 straight days ahead of me of paddling rivers that I'd never seen before, with I knew 2 people there, and like that was it. It was a bit of like a leap of faith rolling into that entire weekend, and just ready to roll with it. But I think if I learned anything over the course of the summer is that like I can be pushed around and I can try to fight like what the currents bring in, or I can just like keep going and see where I end up.
I like that. And so, Rebecca, before we bring our friend Claudette in, we're going to chat a little bit about so if you first off went down in a raft, right? And scouted the Lower Caribou. And you went in that raft with our friend Claudette. So we're going to bring her on the stream so that you guys can share that story together. And then I do want you to tell us, Rebecca, what it was like for you to actually stand up paddleboard the Lower Caribou for the first time. So give us a second here while we bring Claudette in. Hey, Claudette, how's it going?
Oh, hello. Hi, Becca.
Hey. I'm gonna like interject and say, like, after all of this adventure with like Jay's car and everything, I drove into the campsite and Claudette was the first person to greet me. She like wandered up to the car, rolled down the window, and she's like, "Are you Rebecca?" I was like, "Are you Claudette? I've heard so much about you." And you far surpassed all my expectations, Claudette.
I was so excited to see you guys. Well, started the adventure weekend. That was awesome.
It was an adventure. And so, yeah, we started off, and Claudette was actually the first person to greet me to Unlikely as well this year. And it was such a warm welcome. And like I said, guys, we will talk a little bit more about the paddling festival a little bit later on. But I do want to talk about, before we say goodbye to Rebecca, about her first couple experiences and runs on the Lower Caribou. So for those of you that don't know, the Lower Caribou flows into Quesnel Forks, right into the campsite. So it's a nice and easy run. It's a class 2 with class 3 rapids. And those are big, pushy, lots of water flowing around you, the swirls and the eddy lines. It's definitely an exciting and on your toes kind of class 3, not a nap with a cup of joe kind of class 3. So after we arrived super late at night, we got organized to rally at a super early 11 o'clock to head to the Lower Caribou. And you guys were all hopping in a raft for the first run down. I got to stand up paddleboard with my friend Kim, so that you guys had an opportunity to see what happened to us in the rapids and the lines that we chose, to have your choice to see it later. So what was it like? Claudette, you raft the Lower Caribou all the time with your family, right?
Yes.
So that wasn't new to you. You had seen it a ton.
And I've kayaked and I've swam virtually every section of it. So I know it very well. Yes.
So Rebecca, for you though, that would have been your first time on, I'm going to say a bigger river, other than
Yeah,
like
that's fair.
Kananaskis would be the biggest river you had paddled up to then, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So what was that like for you?
Like, it was a little almost like frightening doing it on a raft first, because you like see all these things and you're like, oh, I'm thinking of paddling that. Like, I'm thinking of standing my way up through this. Like, okay. But also, to Rita's point, like just helpful in seeing like, okay, these are some of the things that I'm going to face. I'm going to watch where Rita and Kim go. I'm going to check out their lines. They were both super helpful in, like pointed it out after the fact and kind of saying where they went. So that also just, helped with, developing my own decision making for whenever I'm on a board. And yeah, I think also just like with being with other people that were experienced on that river added a sense of like calmness to it as well. It's like, well, there's a few other people here that I'm hanging out with and they're all still alive. So I should probably be fine on this. Yeah. So that was, like definitely worthwhile to just take that opportunity to see the river. But also like see the landscape too. So as I'm paddling, I wasn't like distracted by these like eagles and like coolies and stuff. And then like realize as I'm halfway through a rapid that I probably should have taken that at a different angle. So it was a good like introduction to the Lower Caribou for sure.
Yeah, I didn't underestimate the amount of eagles when I sold Unlikely Paddle Fest, did I?
You did not, no.
Like, eagle. Like you're gonna see an eagle and then another eagle and then an eagle. And so Rebecca, you did decide to stand up paddleboard the entire Lower Caribou section on the second day.
Yeah. So
did it work? Did the application of seeing it from a raft help you go down, do you think?
100%. So like I did paddle it twice. So I think we rafted in the morning and then supped it in the afternoon.
Oh, right.
And like, ran into some of my own issues like when supping it. It was like, oh, okay, I did a lot of swimming in these sections. I know what to look for. So it was that second time on the sup. And like that to me just stands out as an entire like sup overall any experience I've had, kind of a highlight. Because of all the work that I put in through all the clinics and all the paddling that I did this year, everything just seemed to click on the Lower Caribou on that second run. I got a sense of like it just understanding how the river moved, being able to like work with it and not against it as I'm rolling through rapids, as I'm taking drops. And then even tying in like some of the surfing clinic lessons too, like recognizing how I can, really start to use my edges in a current to help direct me and like better steer through some big pushy stuff as well. Like it was like just an incredible experience where it was finally like, okay, all these things now make sense. All of these maybe areas that I've struggled with over the course of the season or had lessons on, and I in my mind know what to do, but maybe can't execute it well. Like all of those executions started happening. And it was just such an incredible feeling and experience. I still did like a little bit of swimming. There was like one particular point where, I took this like great drop and was like riding through the wave train, and it just got so overstoked. As I learned as a term this year, that, you're going and you're standing up higher and higher because you think you're through. And then this little like reactionary wave just like tips you over. And it's like, but I just made it through all this big stuff. But you still swim anyways. But yeah, it was just that opportunity and experience to like really be on a big river and see what it could do, but also like own it.
Nice. Awesome.
Awesome.
And it, like, you totally did own it. And we're going to hear about Claudette's build up to her stand-up paddleboarding down the Claudette, or down the lower Caribou later when we get to her unlikely story. But we're going to say goodbye to Rebecca for now. And thank you so much for joining us. I would love to hear your highlights. And like I said, the can's still flowing. So get out that dry suit, and I'm ready to paddle when you are. And hopefully we will talk to you soon.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, Becca.
Bye.
All right, Claudette.
Hello.
Hello. So last but definitely not least, I am super excited that you were a part of my 2020 paddling season. And it's still, I guess, 2020, and I'm still paddling, so my season's not over. But just hanging out with you and your family and everyone is one of my highlights in its entirety. So why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about who you are?
Well, I live here in this beautiful interior of BC, born and raised here. Both me and my man, who's the captain of our paddling crew family, both work up at the mine up here, copper mine, Gibraltar Mines. Been there for many, many years. And on our off time, we are on the rivers, every river, all over, in all kinds of different crafts, whether we're kayaking or rafting, or his brother has a creature craft. The kids are getting into it. I'm swimming big stuff, and Keenan's taking me down in the duo down the big stuff that I can't paddle on my own. We just live on the river. Yeah. And now we have our dogs on the river too. So we have a big family of river people.
Yeah, and you guys spend most of and you're the ringleader of that family, right? And you're organizing everybody and getting everybody out, and there's a whole crew of you, and you guys paddle almost every weekend throughout the summer, would you say?
Oh, as much as we possibly can. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm the organizer, and Keenan's the guide. Keenan's the owner of the rivers. Yeah. But yeah, we've got so many beautiful rivers in this area just at our fingertips. It's an hour drive, and we're in so many beautiful places. So we're very fortunate. Yeah.
Well, I know one of the highlights is your family and getting to spend so much time paddling with your family. Why don't you tell us a little bit more? Because you have multiple generations that you're spanning, and everybody's getting out and having fun. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your crew?
Yeah, I've been very blessed to roll into this. Like, I've always been a water person, always loved kayaking, lake kayaking, then got into ocean kayaking, and that was my jam. And then when I met Keenan many moons ago, he started getting me into the rivers. So got to meet him, and his whole family. His dad has been part of the river community for quite a long time. His brother, his younger brother, he's got a creature craft. If you Google that, it's a pretty fun unit to take down on some big rivers. And then
Terrifying.
Yeah, terrifying but fun. And Keenan is, yeah, he's a solid paddler. So I'm very blessed to have him right with me. And then now we've got the next generation coming up. His son Leland, 15 years old. He's been paddling now for I'm not sure how many years, and he is just killing it. Yeah, Keenan's finally got his paddling buddy, because we don't have a huge community here in the Williams Lake area. So, and then the youngest one coming up, his daughter Kiana, 12 years old, she at the end of this season started doing her own solo kayaking down the river. So it's pretty exciting. Yeah, we've got access to an indoor pool all winter, so we train all winter and play and have fun. And as soon as the ice comes off we go again.
Nice. And I think, well, one of the highlights, I think, that family, your whole family, you guys get to go on a rafting trip, and I was blessed this year to get to be a part of the family and come on your family Tiziko trip. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that and what inspires you to organize that trip for your whole family every year?
It's we've gone out to that particular area, so that's out in the western area of Williams Lake in the Chilcotin. So the Tisico River, Choco River, and we've gone out there and we run the Choco quite a bit. And we wanted to do more multi-day, and it just turned out last year was our first year to really plan for it and go for it. And it was just so fantastic. And then again this year, and it's going to be every year. It is just such a beautiful, beautiful area. And the way that we organize it, it just works for everybody. And we've got such a great paddling community from all around that, we have quite a posse going out there. So it's pretty fun. And able to bring the kids, and we have 2 little golden retrievers, thankfully, and they come with us too. And they've been on the rivers with us on these multi-day trips and running it like nothing. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see how everyone we all were a big group, but everyone had their own little raft, their own little camp pack, especially because, right, we were coming from different areas. So we still stayed respectful on that trip. But one of my highlights from the Tiziko trip, so almost everybody that's been hanging out with me, they've all heard the flip story. And if you haven't heard the flip story, then you can call me up later and I will tell you the flip story. But my highlight is actually the day after I flipped my raft. So I haven't rowed a boat in a long time, and I had a little 10'5" boat rowing down class 3 with a couple 4s, and it was exhausting. And we had a water pump, so I had to pump water, and my arms just couldn't do another thing. And it was so amazing that all the kids, so Leland and Max and Kiana, like you mentioned, and Molly, they all took turns coming over and rowing Rosie for me the day after I flipped on the sun tanning day. And so for me, it was so amazing to see that. I think they're 10 and 12, those 2 girls.
Yeah.
And they're rowing down and asking me questions, and we're pointing out eddies and learning how to row away from hazards. And as we were finding camp, if they didn't think they were going to make the eddy, they'd be like, Rita, switch quick. And I'm like, no, you got it. And so that, I think, teaching and hanging out with those young girls in the raft was actually one of my big highlights of that trip.
And I noticed that last year, and I noticed this year, is every one of these trips, that's what's so exciting about it, is it challenges everybody. I think everybody, maybe not everybody, but a good handful of people had big challenging moments. And it was awesome. Everyone overcame it. We had such a great group of support. It was awesome and so beautiful. It was so beautiful out there.
It is so beautiful. So, and speaking of beauty and a group coming together and support, and the coolest thing that we as paddlers all do, and we heard Rebecca talk about it a little bit, the last but not final, one of the final things that we're going to talk about tonight on this live chat is actually Unlikely Paddle Fest. And so in addition to being the guru that gets the family organized to go out on all the adventures, you are also a huge part about in organizing Unlikely. And we do want to take a second here, everyone, just to talk about Unlikely Paddle Fest, because we do know that a lot of paddle festivals and other events were canceled in the 2020 season. And we don't want anyone to get the wrong impression of that we all just disregarded that COVID was happening and threw a big paddling festival. So although it was still called Unlikely Paddle Fest, things did look a little bit different than they normally do. And I'm going to let Claudette touch on her approach to getting Unlikely ready for this adjusted season and the view. I'm also going to post in the comments a little statement that we wrote up if anyone wants to read in a little bit further to how Unlikely allowed everyone to control their own comfort zone. Passing it over to you, Claudette.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it likely BC and the community in Likely has always embraced this paddle fest. And normally, well, I guess it has changed over the years, but quite a few years, we just camp in the town of Likely and we pretty much take over the whole downtown. And we're camping on lawns and in behind the bar and just all over the place. And there's just tents wall to wall, and it's just a fun, huge, great time. And this year we chose to take it down to Quesnel Forks, which is an old ghost town, beautiful, beautiful area. And as you guys had mentioned, and that's where the Quesnel River that comes straight from Likely and then the Caribou River meet. And there is a vast amount of area for people to camp. And so people did do that. We pointed out all the different areas. There was only a couple other non-paddlers down there. And everyone found their spot and they found their space, and they, for the most part, stuck with their bubble. And I know I disinfected and cleaned everything, outhouses and vehicles, and people had masks. Our shuttles were different than they normally would be. So a lot of times it was just your close people were inside the cab and everyone else was in the back or in a raft or, you know, whatever. More vehicles were going up and down than normal. And it was great. And everybody respected everybody's space. So that was really, really nice. And, you know, our fires at night, we had a huge fire pit and everyone had a lot of room to space out if they wanted to. And it was wonderful.
Yeah, I honestly thought it was managed quite well, and I think that it gave a lot of that wild freedom that the reason the crazy wild paddlers that we all are go to paddling festivals to feel wild and feel free. And I loved the approach and the wording of control your own comfort zone. I think that made it still feel like a welcoming place, but allowed for people to do what they needed to feel safe and still enjoy.
Oh, totally.
And so, Claudette, before we wrap this evening up and say goodbye to everyone, I want to know, because you were a part of the new SUP crew at Unlikely. So in addition to being the rad organizer, sending it in rafts down all the runs, making sure that all the outhouses have toilet paper every single morning, making sure the twinkle lights are on, you're everywhere, you're this, you're that. You decided that you're going to take up the sport of whitewater stand-up paddleboarding as well at Unlikely Paddle Fest. So how did that go for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't take up the opportunity on our Tosico trip. And after I did on the Lower Caribou, I wish I would have. But watching everyone going down and knowing, I mean, I've been on these rivers so many times in so many different fashions. The support and the group and seeing everybody out there was just the driving force that, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. And I was so excited that I did it. I went through stuff that I did not think I was going to be going through standing up. I mean, I did go down on my knees for one section for sure. And I did go off right at the end of one section and had to climb back on, but that was awesome. And I am so stoked for next year. Yeah. And it's getting the rest of the family into it too, something that they haven't done. So they want to be part of it too. So it's just going to be part of our thing now. Just add it to our fleet.
Yeah, well, I heard that you might. I heard a rumor from a little birdie that you may or may not have added some river shreds to your fleet.
Yes,
So
river
yeah,
shreds.
I'm not sure, but I heard a rumor. So yeah, and Claudette, I cannot be more excited to see you guys going. Like even watching Leland sup down there. Like I
Yes.
remember on the I don't think it has a name, the wave around the corner there. But I had to, give him crap because he was out surfing everybody on that paddleboard. I couldn't even catch that wave. I was
I
trying
know.
so hard, and he made it look so easy.
Yeah.
And so I cannot wait to paddle with you guys again and see you guys again. And with that being said, after all this unlikely talk, I bet Jackie's already booking her time off for next year. And I know that Rebecca, who is probably already has it blocked off for next year. So, girls, are you going to come to Unlikely Paddle Fest in 2021?
Oh, absolutely.
It sounds promising.
I'm bringing Lisa and Alicia with me.
Yeah, Alicia needs to come. Lisa needs to come. All the girls and the guys, everybody needs to come. The third weekend in September, but we want to make sure that we're controlling our own comfort zone, right? Whatever things are in 2021, I know that Claudette will adapt her approach to whatever's current. We can't look that far ahead. But I think for a crazy season that I'll tell you in April when I was crying because I didn't think that I was going to teach a single paddleboarding lesson this year, I think that it worked out pretty well. Everybody did their best to wear their masks. We kept our space in our courses. We disinfected boards. Jackie drove 8 to 7 hours, a whole bunch of times to come paddling. Rebecca paddled new rivers. Claudette tried stand-up paddleboarding for the first time. And I had a lot of fun sharing my love for the river. The reason Rita Sups is I just want to see everybody grow and share my passion for the rivers and for staying safe out there. So hopefully we'll all paddle soon, and follow along on my Facebook page or my Instagram to see when my next live chat will be and who I'll be tuning in with. So have a great night, everybody.
Woo!
Bye, guys.
See you guys.